Commander 3 Van marked Staff Sergeant Daniel Akoy dead at 6:11 colony time, and she would spend the rest of her life regretting how little time she spent confirming it. The rival raid on Cassandra colony had gone, by every measure her own tactical staff could offer, better than expected. 40 colonists secured. The colony's small defense garrison, 12 soldiers strong, reduced within the first 11 minutes to 9 confirmed casualties, 2 surrenders and 1 soldier. The garrison's demolition specialist, found slumped against the perimeter wall with a chest wound her own medical scanner read as catastrophic. Blood loss well past the threshold her species' own physiology would have survived. It had been, by the host's own exacting standards, an unusually clean operation, executed with the practiced efficiency of a raiding party that had run this exact playbook 11 times before across 3 prior campaigns, and 3 Van had allowed herself, in the raid's immediate aftermath, a rare moment of genuine satisfaction watching her soldiers move through the colony's narrow streets with the calm, unhurried confidence of professionals who understood precisely how thoroughly they had already won. 3 Van had seen enough dead humans, across 3 prior campaigns, to trust her scanner's assessment without a second look. She logged him as the raid's 10th casualty, ordered his body left where it lay pending the garrison's formal surrender processing, and turned her attention to the considerably more pressing business of securing 40 hostages against a colony that outnumbered her own raiding party more than 3 to 1. It was, her own after-action report would later admit, the single costliest assumption of her career. Daniel Akoy had not, in fact, died at 6:11 colony time. He had come close enough that his own body's emergency systems had shut down everything not essential to keeping his brain minimally oxygenated, a survival response his combat medic training recognized, dimly, through a haze of pain and blood loss, as the same trick his own grandmother's stories describe surviving hypothermia victims pulling off in Canadian winters 2 centuries back. Bodies rationing what little warmth and blood pressure remained toward the organs that mattered most and simply, temporarily abandoning everything else. It was not a plan. It was not even, in the first several minutes, a conscious choice. It was simply what was left of him after the rival soldier's plasma round tore through the lower right quadrant of his chest, and it happened to look, to an alien scanner calibrated on 3 prior campaigns' worth of human casualties, exactly like death. He came back to something resembling consciousness roughly 90 minutes later, in the particular gray, disorienting way of someone surfacing from very deep water. And the first thing he understood, before he understood the pain or the cold ground beneath him, or the distant sound of rival voices moving through the colony's central square, was that nobody had checked on him since. 3 Van spent those same 90 minutes securing the colony's central administration building, converting it into a temporary command post from which she could process the surrendered garrison and begin the considerably more delicate work of establishing which of the 40 colonists held ransom value, and which were simply excess weight her raiding party would need to decide what to do with. She had commanded raids like this 11 times before, across a career that had made her, by rival reckoning, one of the host's most reliably efficient field commanders, and she moved through Cassandra colony's occupation with the same brisk, practiced confidence she had brought to every prior campaign, entirely unaware that 90 meters away, behind the colony's grain silo, a man her own scanner had certified dead was, very slowly, very painfully, beginning to move. The first rival soldier to die was a young private named Keswick Vaughan, found 4 hours into the occupation at the base of the colony's water tower, his own sidearm still holstered, no sign of struggle, a single precise wound to the base of his skull that the host's own field medic would later describe, in a report 3 Van read 3 times before she fully absorbed what it was telling her, as delivered with the exact economical precision of someone who had killed silently before, and intended to do so again, without wasting a single unnecessary motion. An animal, her second-in-command suggested when the body was found. "This world has predators," the colonists mentioned. "No animal removes a sidearm's ammunition and leaves the weapon behind," 3 said, crouching beside the body with a coldness settling into her chest that she recognized, uneasily, as the particular fear that came from realizing a battlefield she believed fully secured was not secured at all. "Double the perimeter watch. I want every soldier paired, no exceptions, until we understand what is actually happening on this colony." What was actually happening, though 3 would not understand it fully for another 18 hours, was that Daniel Akoy, bleeding, badly concussed, operating on a body that any reasonable medical assessment would have already written off, had spent his first 4 conscious hours doing the only thing his training had ever really prepared him to do under conditions this catastrophic, which was to very slowly, very methodically, take stock of exactly what remained available to him and decide. With the particular grim clarity of a man who had already technically died once that morning, and found the experience considerably less final than expected, that he was not finished yet. He had, in the immediate aftermath of the ambush, been left within 20 meters of the garrison's forward supply cache, a small, unremarkable storage shed the rival raiding party had not bothered securing, correctly assessing that a colony garrison already reduced to corpses and surrenders posed no further meaningful threat. Inside that shed, Daniel found a working sidearm with a partial charge, a field medical kit considerably better stocked than his own wounds strictly deserved, and more usefully than either, 11 years of combat engineering training that had taught him, long before this particular war ever began, that the most dangerous soldier on any battlefield was rarely the one with the most firepower. It was the one who understood the terrain better than anyone currently occupying it. He knew Cassandra Colony's water tower access ladder had a maintenance panel that opened onto a crawlspace running the length of the colony's central water main, a detail he'd learned 2 years earlier fixing a pressure fault nobody else on garrison duty had wanted to climb up and repair. He knew the grain silo's ventilation grate opened into a service tunnel that ran. Unmarked on any colony schematic, the rival raiders would have accessed, directly beneath the administration building 3 had claimed as her command post. He knew, above all, that a raiding force this far from reinforcement, this confident in an occupation it believed fully secured, would take considerably longer to recognize a threat operating from inside its own perimeter than it would take him, bleeding and concussed and running on nothing but stubbornness and 11 years of training, to become exactly that threat. The second rival soldier died 9 hours into the occupation, in the grain silo's ventilation shaft, a wound the field medic's report described with the same unsettling precision as the first. The third died shortly before dawn, at the edge of the colony's eastern perimeter, and it was this third death, discovered by a search party 3 herself led out into the pre-dawn dark, that finally forced her to reckon with a possibility her own tactical training had spent her entire career teaching her to dismiss. "Bring me the human casualty list again," she told her second-in-command, standing over the third body with a growing, uneasy certainty settling into her chest. "Every one. I want confirmed kills only, not assumed ones." The list, when it reached her 20 minutes later, contained 10 names. 9 confirmed by direct visual and scanner assessment at the time of death. 1. Staff Sergeant Daniel Akoy, confirmed only by a single scanner reading taken in the chaos of the raid's opening minutes, body left unrecovered, unconfirmed by any follow-up examination in the 18 hours since. "He is dead," her second-in-command said, though something in his voice suggested he was working to convince himself as much as her. The scanner reading was catastrophic. No human survives a wound of that severity untreated. The scanner reading was taken 90 seconds after he was struck, in the middle of an active firefight, by a soldier who had 11 other casualties to process in the same span of time, 3 said, and found, saying it aloud, that she already knew, with the particular sick certainty of a commander recognizing her own mistake too late to fully undo it, exactly what had actually happened to her missing 10th casualty. "Get me his body. Now." Confirmed, this time, with my own eyes, or get me the man responsible for the fact that we cannot find it. They found neither that morning, nor the morning after. Daniel Akoy had by then relocated 3 times through the colony's service tunnels, rationing the medical kit's supplies with the same disciplined patience he'd applied to every other resource available to him, watching the rival occupation's confidence curdle, hour by hour, into something considerably more fragile, a raiding party of 31 soldiers, -3 and counting, increasingly unwilling to patrol alone, increasingly unwilling to sleep in anything but the tightest possible formation. Haunted by an enemy they could not locate and had, by that point, stopped being entirely certain was even human at all. "Colonists are calling him something," 3 of Van's translator reported on the 3rd day of the occupation, relaying chatter overheard from the hostages held in the administration building's lower level. A word from their old religious texts. It translates, roughly, to the one who returns from the dead ground. "They believe it, Commander. Some of them. I do not think they are simply attempting to frighten us. I think they genuinely believe their soldier died and has come back for exactly this purpose." "I do not care what they believe," 3 of Van said, though the words came out with less conviction than she intended. "I care that a raiding party 31 soldiers strong is being dismantled, one careless patrol at a time, by a single wounded man, and that in 3 days of trying we have not once managed to locate him, confirm his position, or predict where he will strike next. Whatever the colonists choose to call him, I am rapidly losing patience with what my own soldiers have started calling him behind my back, which is considerably closer to the truth than either of us would like to admit." The confrontation, when it finally came, was not the ambush 3 of Van had spent 3 sleepless days bracing for. It was, instead, Daniel Akoy himself, exhausted, feverish, running on the very last reserves of a body that had been operating past its actual limits for the better part of 4 days, walking directly into the colony's central square at dawn on the 4th morning, weaponless, hands raised, and calling out, in a voice considerably steadier than his condition had any right to produce, for 3 of Van by name. "I know you're looking for me," he said, as the rival perimeter guards, startled and considerably more frightened than their weapons suggested, converged on his position with the particular skittish caution of soldiers who had spent 3 days assuming this exact moment would end very differently. "Figured I'd save everybody the trouble of finding out the hard way. I'm done, Commander. I've got maybe an hour of standing left in me, if that, and I'm not gonna spend it hunting your people through tunnels when I could spend it talking instead. You want to know why I did what I did the last 3 days? Or you just want to know if I'm actually finished causing you problems?" 3 of Van emerged from the administration building herself, against her own second-in-command's urgent, whispered objection, and studied the man standing in the square with an expression that her own soldiers would later describe, in accounts that spread through the host's officer corps for months afterward, as something considerably closer to respect than the fury the moment seemed to demand. "Both, Sergeant," she said, "though I suspect the first answer explains the second more thoroughly than either of us has time for." "Fair enough," Daniel said, swaying slightly, catching himself against the square's old stone well before continuing. "Short version. You left 40 of my people in that administration building, and I figured somebody had to make sure you didn't decide at some point in the next few days that hostages who weren't worth the trouble of feeding were hostages you'd rather not keep. I couldn't fight 31 soldiers head-on. Wasn't stupid enough to try. But I could make 31 soldiers real reluctant to sleep, real reluctant to patrol alone, real reluctant to do anything except sit real still and wait for reinforcements that I happen to know, from listening to your own people's radio chatter for the past 3 days, weren't actually coming for another 11 days minimum. Figured I could buy my colony 11 days of you being too scared to do anything reckless to the hostages. Looks like I got about 4. I'm out of tricks, Commander, and pretty much out of blood too. So I figured I'd rather end this looking you in the eye than get found dead in a tunnel somewhere, without ever having a chance to ask you straight what happens to those 40 people now. 3 Van studied him for a long moment, this bleeding, swaying, utterly spent man who had, across 4 days, dismantled her raiding party's confidence more thoroughly than any conventional counterattack could have managed, and found, to her own considerable surprise, that the question he'd asked was one she genuinely did not yet know how to answer. "You have cost me 3 soldiers, Sergeant," she said, "and a great deal more sleep than I care to admit. I would be well within my rights, by every standard my own host holds, to have you executed where you stand." "You would," Daniel agreed. "Wouldn't even really blame you for it. But I don't think that's actually why you walked out here yourself instead of sending your second to handle it. I think you're the kind of commander who wants to look at the thing that scared your whole raiding party for 3 straight days and decide for yourself whether it was actually worth being scared of, or whether you just got unlucky with one stubborn soldier who happened to know his own colony better than you did. And for what it's worth, Commander, I think it's mostly the second one. I'm not some kind of unkillable ghost your people have started calling me. I got real lucky a scanner misread me in the chaos of a firefight, and I spent every hour after that making the absolute most of luck I didn't expect to get twice. That's not a ghost story. That's just a man who wasn't ready to let 40 of his own people get left alone with soldiers who might decide, on a bad day, that hostages weren't worth the trouble anymore." It was 3 Van's own report, filed 9 days later once Cassandra Colony's Earth defense reinforcements finally arrived, and the rival raiding party withdrew under a hastily negotiated ceasefire that traded the colonists' safe release for the host's unmolested retreat. That would become, in the years that followed, one of the most widely studied documents in the host's own military academy. Cited specifically for the Section 3, Van herself insisted be included over her superior's objections, that it painted her own campaign in an unflattering light. "I certified this soldier dead based on a single hurried scanner reading," she wrote, "taken under combat conditions by a medic managing 11 simultaneous casualties. And I did not once, in the 18 hours that followed, order a direct confirmation of that reading before turning my full attention to the considerably easier task of processing his colony's surrender. This error cost the host 3 soldiers, 4 days of a badly compromised occupation, and very nearly cost us the entire raid's objective. I do not offer this account to excuse my own failure of diligence. I offer it because I believe every officer who reads this report should understand precisely what a wounded, determined human being is actually capable of once an enemy makes the mistake of assuming his fight has already ended. It has not ended, in my direct experience, until considerably more evidence exists than a single instrument reading taken in the heat of the moment it was recorded. I would ask this host's future field commanders to remember that lesson considerably more thoroughly than I remembered it myself, on a colony called Cassandra, against a soldier who was, by every reasonable measure available to me at the time, already dead. Daniel Akoy survived his wounds, though the recovery took the better part of a year, and he would tell the story himself, when asked, with considerably less drama than the version that eventually circulated through rival military academies under 3 Van's own careful, self-critical account. "People keep wanting it to be some kind of miracle," he told a visiting Earth defense historian, 2 years after Cassandra, sitting on the same colony's rebuilt perimeter wall with the particular tired patience of a man who had told this story enough times to recognize exactly which parts people actually wanted to hear. "It wasn't a miracle. I got hit bad, and I got lucky a scanner misread it, and then I spent 4 days doing exactly what 11 years of training taught me to do, which was use every advantage I actually had left instead of wasting time wishing I had the advantages I didn't. I wasn't trying to be a ghost story, ma'am. I was just trying to buy 40 people enough time to still be alive when help finally showed up. Everything else is just what happens when somebody decides, real specifically, exactly what they're not willing to let go of, and then refuses to stop moving until that thing's actually safe.